Welcome to the 8th episode of our show, Pakistan, a hard country where we delve into the complex realities of Pakistan through the lens of Anatol Lieven's thought-provoking book.
That's right.
Today, we're zeroing in on the 7th chapter, Punjab, which spans from page 220 to 269. This isn't just about a province, it's really a deep dive into the heartland of Pakistan.
Absolutely. Punjab is more than just geographically central. It's the political, economic, and cultural powerhouse of the nation. Lieven's exploration here gives us a really crucial lens to understand Pakistan's present and, well, its future.
So our goal today is to kind of move beyond just describing it, right? We want to really understand the forces that make Punjab so pivotal and often kind of contradictory.
Exactly, to get under the skin of it.
Okay, let's start by unpacking the historical context Lieven lays out. He really emphasizes Punjab's unique position, historically straddling empires, and its fundamental role in, the eventual creation of Pakistan.
But as Lieven points out, and as we know, that path was just paved with immense suffering.
Yeah, the partition.
The sheer scale of the human tragedy during the 1947 partition in Punjab is just striking. Lieven reminds us of the estimates, anywhere from 200,000 to perhaps 1 million lives lost in the massacres across Punjab and Bengal.
It's staggering.
It is. And beyond the deaths, you had the displacement of over 7.5 million Punjabi refugees. That created not just physical borders, but these deep, deep psychological scars.
Scars that you argue are still felt today.
Well, Lieven argues, and I think it's convincing, that this trauma, arguably more profound in Punjab than elsewhere, it really became a foundational element of the national story.
Yeah.
It still echoes in relations with India and even internal identity debates.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And Lahore, which was this major pre-partition city, suddenly finds itself right on the border.
Right on the edge.
Lieven suggests this transformation really fueled a lasting preoccupation, almost an obsession, with the perceived threat from India. He mentions the 1965 war as a clear example of this.
And connecting this to the bigger picture of Pakistani nationhood, it's fascinating how Pakistani Punjab, despite being the cradle of the Punjabi language, largely adopted Urdu as the national language.
Which is a big difference compared to other provinces and obviously Indian Punjab.
A huge difference. Lieven interprets this as a really powerful demonstration of Pakistani Punjab's early and very strong commitment to the new Pakistani state, a sort of willingness to prioritize national unity over maybe linguistic identity at that point.
Interesting. Okay, but Lieven doesn't paint Punjab with one brush, does he? He gets into the regional diversity within the province itself.
No, definitely not. He breaks it down, starting with central Punjab. That's where you find Lahore, the cultural, intellectual capital, alongside big industrial centers like Faisalabad, famous for textiles.
And what about the power structures there?
Well, what stands out in Lieven's analysis is how things have shifted. The traditional dominance of the big landowning families, the sort of feudal influence that's diminished somewhat, replaced more by smaller landowners, and also people who've gained wealth through business or government service. Plus, you've got these really deep connections to Kashmir, partly from migration. Lieven mentions the Sharif family's origins, for instance.
Right.
And that connection undeniably strengthens the region's commitment to the Kashmir issue. It's also why, he notes, Punjabi speakers from Pakistani Kashmir are so prominent in the British Pakistani diaspora.
Okay, then moving northwest, we hit the Potwar Plateau. Lieven describes this area very differently.
Very differently. Poor, arid land, largely missed by the big canal colony projects. He emphasizes the strong cultural influence from Pathan tribes. There even points to Imran Khan Niazi's ancestry as an example.
And economically.
Yeah.
It was known for something else, right?
Yeah, historically, its reliance on labor export was key. The poor land meant it became a major recruiting ground, first for the British Army, and then initially for the Pakistani Army, too.
But that's changing.
It is changing, as Lieven observes. Economic development, plus more migration to the Gulf states, is shifting that pattern. But interestingly, he says politics there still heavily rely on kinship, on traditional leadership within groups.
We got it. And finally, northern Punjab areas like Gujarat, Sialkot, Gujranwala. This sounds like a real economic engine.
Oh, absolutely. Dominated by small and medium-sized landowners, but Lieven really underscores the vibrant industrial sector here. It's incredibly diverse.
Like what specifically?
You've got textiles, food processing, Sialkot's famous sports goods, and the surprising one, bagpipes.
Bagpipes, really?
And shoes in Gujarat, electrical goods, too. Lieven argues this level of industrial activity is pretty much unmatched elsewhere in Pakistan, maybe apart from Karachi.
And also a big source of migration to the UK, he notes.
Yeah, another major source for the diaspora in Britain.
So Punjab's economic contribution is clearly massive. Lieven then dives into the broader economic dynamics, the social structures, including that sensitive topic of resource allocation within Pakistan.
Right. And what's quite insightful is the perspective Lieven finds among many Punjabi elites. He highlights this feeling they have that the province often leans over backwards, to accommodate other provinces.
How so?
Well, they point to things like Punjab's 55% quota for official jobs being slightly less than its share of the population. And after 2010, its share of state revenues also fell below its population share and what it actually generates. So there's a perception of maybe unfairness.
And tied into that, there's a certain sense of Punjabi pride, almost superiority in work ethic.
Yeah, Lieven mentions that perception, a sense of being more organized, harder working compared to other groups, perhaps with the Mohajirs as an exception. And he also points out how the traditional worldview is just so deeply rooted in agriculture.
But this economic dynamism faces challenges. Power shortages seem huge.
Crippling, as Lieven stresses. It forces businesses, big and small, to invest heavily in their own private power generation. It really shows how interdependent the economy is there.
And despite all this change, the landed families still hold significant sway politically.
They do. Lieven notes they still have a considerable presence, a small majority even, in national and provincial assemblies. Even if their wealth now often comes more from urban land, they remain these influential landed figures, not just, urban professionals.
Okay, this leads into a really interesting point Lieven makes about what he calls the failure of a military-industrial alliance in Pakistan. He contrasts it with places like Germany or Japan.
Yeah, this is a really pivotal argument for understanding Pakistan's economic path. Lieven sees this initial promise, particularly under Zia-ul Haq with Nawaz Sharif rising, a chance for the military and industry to align and really drive development.
But it didn't happen. Why not?
Well, Lieven argues it fractured for several reasons. The army wasn't willing to consistently back the Muslim League against the PPP. Then the Muslim League tried to sort of dominate the military. And finally, Musharraf overthrowing Sharif just kind of blew it apart, leading to compromises with the more traditional feudal types again.
So missed opportunity with big consequences.
The huge missed opportunity, according to Lieven, with lasting economic repercussions. It makes you wonder what specific policies after Zia really cemented that breakdown, and what are the long-term effects he sees beyond just lost potential. He doesn't spell it all out, but the question hangs there.
Let's circle back to identity. Lieven talks about this apparent paradox, this strong Punjabi pride existing alongside a really powerful commitment to the Pakistani state. Almost a submersion into it.
It's a genuinely fascinating point he makes. Think about the language issue again, the lack of a strong push for Punjabi as the provincial language, with Urdu being promoted instead.
Which is so different from Sindh or the former NWF.
Exactly. Starkly different. And then there's the huge number of Punjabis in the military, even if they are disproportionately from that pot-war region we mentioned. It all points to this deep link with the state.
So Lieven's argument is that Punjabi identity in Pakistan is more civic, linked to the state itself rather than purely ethnic.
That seems to be his core argument. It's become intertwined with the idea of Pakistan. Now, is that a view everyone holds or more an elite perspective? Are there counter-narratives about language and ethnicity within Punjab that's maybe less explored, but the main thrust is this civic connection?
Okay, and finally the politics. Lieven maps out the political landscape, mentioning key players, the rise of families like the Sharifs.
And he analyzes the different support bases. He looks at the PPP, historically strong, but now seeing its support erode in urban places like Lahore.
Why is that happening?
Lieven links it to the growth of the lower middle class and also the increasing influence of Deobandi Islamist culture, a conservative Islamic movement that's gained ground, particularly in some urban areas, impacting social and political views.
And the Muslim League and
They've traditionally drawn a lot of support from business, partly because of opposition to Bhutto's earlier nationalizations. But Lieven notes that while old patronage and kinship ties still matter in Punjabi politics, party affiliation and ideology are becoming increasingly important too. It's evolving.
Wow. So this deep dive into Punjab really does tell us so much about Pakistan overall. It feels like a microcosm of the whole country's complexities.
It really does. You see the weight of history, the regional differences, the economic struggles, the changing social fabric, and that very unique sense of identity that's so tied up with the state.
Yeah, this chapter really highlights that complex dance between tradition and modernity, doesn't it? And the shadow of partition, always there. Plus that constant search for stability and prosperity.
Exactly. And that idea of the unfulfilled potential, that failure to forge a strong military-industrial alliance for development. That's such a critical theme when you look at Pakistan's economic story as Lieven presents it.
But ultimately, Lieven seems to emphasize that strong Punjabi commitment to the idea of Pakistan, even while holding on to a distinct regional identity, is actually a key part of the country's resilience.
It seems to be. It's a major stabilizing factor in his view.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listeners, to ponder. How might these ongoing changes in Punjab, the shifting demographics, the evolving economy, how might they continue to shape Pakistan's national identity and its political future?
It's a really important question, something worth thinking about as you continue to explore the intricate, often surprising reality of this hard country.